Meeting will come to order. Please join me in a moment of silent prayer or reflection. Terry, will you take roll, please?
Archana Alliar.
Here.
Nicole Cohen.
Here.
John Maskin. Kathy Cox.
Here.
Lisa Roman.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2 is an item to review and accept the agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda as printed?
I move we approve and accept the agenda as presented.
Second?
Nicole Cohen.
Yes.
Kathy Cox.
Yes.
Archana Alliar.
Yes.
Lisa Roman.
Yes. Item 3.1 is the approval of distance learning plan to start August 3rd, 2020, and is presented by Dr. Stone.
Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended that the governing board approve the implementation of the distance learning plan on the approved start date of August 3rd for all LHUSD students. Governor Ducey's Executive Order 2020-44 states that all schools shall delay the start of in-person classes until August 17th, 2020. But schools may begin the school year on their regularly planned start date prior to August 17th, 2020 through distance learning. Our students have been out of school since March 2020 and need to return to learning as soon as possible. Implementing the distance learning plan on August 3rd will engage our students, connect our teachers, students, and families, and provide the district additional time to consider options for reopening in-person learning when possible.
Do I have a motion on item 3.1?
I move that we approve item 3.1.
Second.
Any discussion, or actually I would like to lead off with your presentation. I'm sorry.
Currently, the governor's executive order, as I shared, 2020-44 delays the start of in-person learning until August 17th. He did state when he made that executive order that that was an aspirational goal. So we continue to await guidance on in-person learning, which we expect next week for anyone who is just listening to his presentation. Having specific guidance and specific dates will help our staff and families make better plans moving forward. And as you know, students have been out of school since March, so we would like to engage our students and families in learning as soon as possible. The executive order, as I stated, does allow for us to start on the approved date of August 3rd, utilizing the distance learning plan. This will look different from the spring closure, and I will share details in the next slide. I do want to share that since our last meeting, parents, teachers, and even a few students have reached out concerning the safety of returning to campus. But most importantly, our parents and students talked about the amazing teachers that they have worked with and how much they want that connection to continue. While we believe that education is most effective when students are in classrooms with their teachers, currently that is not possible on our approved start date. As we begin the school year, we are also taking additional time to engage with a variety of stakeholders at all school sites to ensure that when in-person learning is allowable, we will have reviewed and revised our plan as needed to address the needs of all students and staff. Prior to any in-person learning, we will provide an update of the plan to the governing board for their review. And just to be clear, we are not presenting any information this evening about in-person learning. Our distance learning plan would begin on August 3rd as our scheduled start date. It will happen through the Google Classroom Learning Platform. Each teacher will have a Google Classroom where students can access all of their assignments and assessments. Teachers will provide daily lessons, some recorded and some live in all core subjects. Providing live lessons provides students with the opportunity to work collaboratively with their teachers and peers. The live lessons will also be recorded so students are able to access the information at a later time if needed. All materials can be accessed online. However, we will, at parents' request, provide all materials as a printed packet. There will be 2 graded assignments each week, and assessments will be given as required. For those accessing work in a printed format, these will need to be returned to school each week for grading. There will be a time for weekly teacher-student check-ins to provide additional support for this instructional model, and teachers will also have office hours should parents or students have any questions. For those students receiving gifted or special education services, staff will contact families to discuss individual plans and ensure all needs are met. Distance learning is designed to offer an experience as close to the traditional classroom experience as we can offer at this time. The Online Academy provides students with access to all core classes using the school's PLP platform. It would also start on August 3rd, and these classes have a recorded video component allowing families to determine when students will access and complete the lessons throughout the week. Recorded lessons also allow for students to review the concepts as many times as needed. District teachers will supervise the completion of classes and classwork, check in with students to support their learning. They are not at this time recording live lessons for this format, although that is something that they can consider as they continue to work through this new format. There are graded assignments and assessments provided through schools PLP, and there has been a question about student collaboration. We will not know if student collaboration is possible until we know how many students are signed up per grade or class. In the event that we only had 1 student in a class, we would not be able to provide for peer collaboration. Students will have access to electives and honors courses in the school's PLP format, and students will also have access to our district CTE and AP courses through the Google Learning Classroom platform. Mr. Gardner has worked with MCC, and the dual enrollment classes are available to all enrolled students regardless of the learning platform. These courses will be offered through MCC's virtual format. At the secondary level, it is very important that families work with school counselors to ensure that students are enrolled in the correct courses as they progress towards graduation. The Online Academy is designed to offer families a great deal of flexibility in terms of learning times throughout a given week. Both formats are aligned to Arizona standards. While lesson assignments and assessments may look different, students will be engaged with the same standards at the same time. In addition, both formats do allow for access to an LHUSD teacher. The access in the distance learning model will be for check-ins, live and recorded lessons, while access in the Online Academy will be primarily through the student-teacher check-ins. There are a variety of items that staff continue to work on as we begin the school year. Our teachers have been doing an amazing job in their classrooms, and we will support them in ensuring that the distance learning plan provides quality instructional experience for all students. The pre-service week is being adjusted to focus on training for the Google Classroom learning platform and providing time for teachers to begin working in the platform. We are asking teachers to the extent possible to be on campus for the pre-service week so they have time to train together and collaboratively plan, as this will be vital for a successful start to the year. When instruction begins, we will be working with staff to provide flexible scheduling so teachers are able to access classroom materials, plan collaboratively, and record lessons as needed. We recognize that this looks different from traditional school, and as such, some staff roles and responsibilities may change. We are currently evaluating all staff positions to determine how they can best support the distance learning model. The governor's executive order continues to allow schools to offer childcare on campus. We are fortunate to partner with Parks and Rec, and we're working to develop a plan that serves as many students as possible. We will have more information about this prior to the start of school. We also know that as we move forward, parents may have a variety of needs. We are sending a survey to all parents soon, so we are able to accurately assess needs and determine how to best support each student utilizing either learning platform. Both our distance learning plan and Online Academy would begin on August 3rd. Once students are enrolled in LHUSD, parents do not need to sign up for distance learning. If parents wish to sign up for the Online Academy, they can visit our website. If parents have previously signed up for the online academy and now wish to participate in distance learning, they can email Mrs. Vestadego at the email on the screen or call the main line and we will remove them from the online academy. When we have more information concerning in-person learning and the date that we may be able to start, we will reconvene with the board to determine next steps. Any revised plans for in-person learning will come as a result of engaging our stakeholders at each school site, as well as any executive orders that may impact our processes and procedures. As we move forward, parents can expect more detailed information about the start of school to be communicated from their child's school. So that's the end of the presentation.
Okay. Well, I would like to lead off with one of the questions, if no one minds. So if I were to start my children in the distance learning, and then school did reopen in person, but I did not feel comfortable at that time for them going in person, do I have then the option of continuing with the distance learning, or do I have to switch with the online academy if I don't want them to go in person at that time?
So that is what we are actually engaging all our stakeholders at our school sites to see what people would be most interested in. When in-person learning is available, and we do assume it will be available at some point, do the majority of our families have a desire to continue with distance learning? Would they want to access the online academy? And we will work with our staff to offer all of the options that we possibly can.
Can you give me a feel of what kind of student might benefit from distance learning versus the online academy?
So for distance learning, you're really going to have that classroom community feel. You would be assigned to the classroom teacher that you would then, if we progress to in-person learning, be able to go to that classroom. You will have live lessons with that teacher. The difference with the online learning academy is really if you want to have total control over when those lessons might happen, when your child may have access to those, and they will have some access or some interaction with a Lake Havasu Unified School District teacher, but it won't be in the same context as if you were in the distance learning program.
Do you want to provide the email address if people want to email questions or comments?
Yes. So if you are tuning in and you have a question or a comment, you can send those to boardmeeting@lhusd.org, and Mrs. Vestadale is monitoring the emails and they will be read. At this point, do we have more comments from the board? Because otherwise I will turn it over to emails.
I have one question about this. So if they are enrolled in distance learning and let's say at the end of the term or semester, they want to switch to the other or vice versa, is that going to be possible?
We will work with every family for whatever best meets the need of their student, absolutely.
Thank you.
I have a question. I know in the spring, we use Zoom, which is more like a meeting type of an app. And I know that a lot of the learning was not new. There was a lot of review. So I'm not familiar with Google Classroom. I haven't seen a demo. But can someone describe the difference in the quality of education? From what I'm reading, it will be far superior and give the teacher a lot more options to use and demonstrate with the student. But I think parents might want to know about that.
Sure. So Zoom is a way to conduct face-to-face or virtual face-to-face meetings. Google Classroom is a learning management system. So there's lots of different learning management systems out there. Blackboard is a very common one. If you're taking college classes online, so it's just a learning management system. And so what Google Classroom is it's a way for teachers to post assignments, links to readings, they can post assessments, they can have monitor discussion, they can have a calendar of what they are doing. And so think of it as you know, the whiteboard where the teacher writes what they're going to be doing for the week, but instead of having baskets for students to turn it in, they're doing that digitally. And so this would be very different than in spring, where we didn't really focus on getting materials out to kids. We know that students need the novels that they have. They need the Singapore math workbooks that they have. They need manipulatives. Those things they need in their hands. And then how can we support their learning with recorded video, with you know, they might still have their textbook and then an assessment. So it's a learning management system, which is very common. And that's not to say that video won't be a part of it. It will be, but it's within a bigger part of it. And so Google Classroom has been a part of what the high school has used for a very long time. And now it's just thinking about how do we really make sure that it's done in a way that we're thoughtful, that students are working through all of the parts of the learning that they need to be working through. And we're not just dumping lessons on, and parents aren't stuck then printing them out, taking pictures, and so we are being much more thoughtful about how we are supporting students with this.
Okay. Follow up to that, in a regular classroom situation, the teacher has her computer and can access programs on her computer and show them to her students on the whiteboard, and they can all see that. So I'm talking now about the teaching aspect, what the teacher's able to provide students. With Google Classroom, the teacher can still access those materials and show them to the students. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. The other question I have about distance learning, and I think it's a really important one, is my understanding is that attendance will be taken, I would like to say every day, but it might even be every period. You might explain that, but I think it's important that parents understand that you know, our funding is tied to attendance, and students show up, we are funded. Students don't show up, we are not funded. So it's a crucial piece for us. So could you speak a little bit about taking attendance? Well, it couldn't, I don't see how it could possibly be once a day unless the classroom, you know, if you're going to have an art teacher, you're going to have a music, I mean, some students will have one teacher all day long on Tuesdays, but they'll have other teachers during the week. And in the high school, and of course middle school, they go around to different teachers. So can the student sign in himself for the attendance, or will the parent have to be there, or how does that work?
So we actually received the distance learning plan template from ADE yesterday. And so this group and our administrators are going to be working through, there is some specific guidance on attendance and how that can be taken.
Okay.
And we will have to make decisions here in terms of, you could count it as the live lesson. When the kids log on, teachers would take attendance as they do in their classroom. You can ask parents to fill out a log and take attendance. There are a variety of ways, but we haven't landed on exactly what we will be doing.
Now, what if the student is in a bedroom sick? Does the parent have to, and doesn't show up, of course, but will the parent need to write a note or email the teacher? Because we have a variety of reasons that are accepted for when a student's not there. Now, I mean, last year we didn't.
Attendance or absences will still be acceptable. There's no rule against that, because they will still be able to access their learning.
But the parent needs to write a note, just like they're used to doing.
We will have more guidance, we understand, that's detailed from ADE specifically about attendance, because people are worried about that.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
In the seminar yesterday, they did say that parents would be, it's possible for parents to sign up, right, on attendance.
Okay.
They suggested that, did you see this?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
There was a seminar, sorry.
Okay, I know.
There was a seminar yesterday, the ASPA seminar, and they did mention that parents would be able to sign off on attendance.
Okay.
I think that's sort of.
Yes, that is absolutely an option in the distance learning plan.
But it sounds, though, that the student, the teacher will be there and see that the student is there in front of her, right?
Right.
And so if the parent is working, it's not going to be a burden on the parent. There's
Right.
several options.
That's just an option
Yeah,
that
yeah,
they
yeah.
can mention.
Okay.
And so for programs, and maybe Mrs. Walter can speak more to this, but for programs such as gifted and special needs and AP, so when we do in-person learning, those classes are typically grouped together. Will the same thing occur if people do distance learning?
Good question. Again, we will need to approach this from an individualized IEP plan because the students do have unique needs. Our related service providers will be providing the option of the teletherapy, so scheduling individual sessions or small groups depending on what the needs are of the student. The special education teachers, case managers will be looking at the accommodations and modifications that are needed. And then again, they will be scheduling time where they will be working with the students. They'll have a check-in time and following up and monitoring. And again, depending on how best to address that. We are still awaiting some guidance from ADE also on this, because there are some specific questions as to what it will be required as far as, do we have to have those IEP meetings at this time or just a prior written notice mapping out our plan. But again, we will be looking at that based on the individual student, not that it's across the board, this is what we're doing for all of our students. Same thing with students that may have a 504 accommodation plan. Much as in the springtime, they're getting accommodations to help them to be able to access whatever the learning that's being provided. And so they'll be looking at that too, talking about how they are making sure that we are removing those barriers.
I have a follow-up question too. I'll give you an example. A student who has been diagnosed with a speech problem and or need for a physical therapist. And of course, the physical therapist does work with the child, but not every day. So are we still going to have assistants, trained assistants who work with those children individually? And would that be in person or probably not distance learning? I don't know. You can answer that.
No, good question. Again, right now, under the current executive order we have, we're not allowed to do in person. We are hoping and planning. In the springtime, there was some language that allowed for that. But again, there were some questions regarding the safety of that, so that wasn't common practice. We are assuming that it's going to allow for some of that because we do know that some students may not benefit from the virtual or the distance learning and need that. And again, if it's safe and that's allowed, it's our intent to do the best that we can to address those needs.
So we'll figure it out as we go.
Right.
Okay.
I just want to touch on, if I understood you correctly, so if this would typically apply to high schoolers, but if the high schoolers are enrolled with dual enrollment or AP classes, your advice is for those parents to reach out to the counselors and get individualized advice.
Absolutely.
Okay. I did have one idea, it's just an idea, but I know, high school is a time when there's just lots of deadlines to meet, whether it's applying for federal financial assistance or taking your SAT or whatever that is. I do think it might be helpful if the counselors put out a grade by grade kind of timeline or checklist that we could distribute if they haven't already made up something like that. Because I think the beginning of the year is usually when we kind of roll out that information and help students see the big picture for the year ahead of them. And so that might be wise to do that, even if we have to give people printed materials instead of an in-person sort of orientation type of session.
We will be meeting with the counselors because again, as we may project, this could be more than just the 2 weeks. We will be looking at how we are going to provide those supports. So we'll look at what we normally do and how can we make this accessible and best support. Our counselors will be very much involved in supporting that social emotional piece, being accessible. They'll have office hours, and then we'll also be presenting lessons and information on the different skills that students need, and also just knowing some of the challenges that families have faced and students during this time.
So, probably the first day of school, when the kids log on, there are going to be some technical difficulties. People that the kids won't understand. I mean, it's probably going to take a few days to get things rolling, and maybe some way for parents or students to quickly contact the teacher and explain what the problem looks like from their end of things. And the teachers won't always know how to solve a particular problem, you know. So I'm hoping the parents can see that the first week may be ragged. Do you predict that might happen?
Well, what we do predict is that we know, just like with the orientation, we have those evenings and information communicated. We'll need to be communicating information, explaining it. Just like the first week of school, where we're going over the handbook and expectations, that's gonna be some of the things that the teachers are gonna need to do, and making that available both within the classroom and even from our district website to make sure. And Ms. Festa can speak to a few other things on that, but we know there's gonna be some challenges, but we do know we're gonna have to have layers of support.
Okay. So instead of having the typical parent orientation, maybe a week before the first day of school, the orientation will probably be on August the 3rd. Would you, I mean, I know you'll have to make these decisions, but I mean, it would start at that point, not probably before, it might, or.
There's gonna be a few things. We are in the process of reviewing our calendars and those dates and things that we normally do with the guidance, you know, after tonight, knowing and shoring that up. Each site does have some activities and ways they're gonna be communicating out with their parents, because we normally do some transition things with students going up to the middle school, coming from preschool to kindergarten. And so they're gonna be looking at how they can, through our new virtual world, or remote learning, be able to access and again, trying to engage parents.
More questions?
I think Jamie might have a comment or question.
I was just gonna add to what Aggie said. So this does not work without parent partnership, and we have to work side by side with parents, and we have to be very clear, and then we have to have those layers of support for parents. And so I've already worked with the technology department today about what are all of the things that we need, and then how do we direct people okay, if this is more than teacher help, who's going to help them at a site, and then when does it get to the technology department? So we already know we're making different videos for kids of all different grade levels. We know that we have to reach out in a very different way to help people understand and to make sure that people have lifelines. So we have thought about it, and we will continue thinking about it, and we are acting on it.
It just occurred to me, we need to make something really clear, and Dr. Sum, if you would speak to this. Let's talk about high school students and parents in their mind. At 8 o'clock you have biology, at 9 o'clock you have PE. I mean, but when you explained this to me, you said, you just gave me an example about what might happen on Monday. The teacher might just put up, these are your assignments for the week, and so the teacher may or may not spend the entire 50 minutes with a class on any given day. There'll be time for the students to work, or I don't know. And so the next time the second period starts, it might not be at 9 o'clock. I don't know. I think if you would talk about that a little bit, would help.
So what we were working on is a master schedule, and yes, for each student, their assignments for each class would be posted each week on Monday, so they would know when are the remote lessons, the recorded lessons would already be posted, their assignments would already be posted. Their live lessons, the schedule for those would be on there, so they would know when to plan. And really the idea would be to have those planned per period, as it would be normally in their schedule. And we're working kind of across the district to try to have as much as we can a master schedule of when those live lessons may be, so we're not overlapping as much as possible for families as they have perhaps more than one student in the household, and accessing that could be difficult. So we're really trying to streamline that as much as possible, but that's taking some coordination to work through. And then we will put out those calendars.
Okay, so you got my brain whirling, I'm sorry. So you're talking about remote instruction. So I'm envisioning the parent who needs to make a doctor's appointment for a child, and she looks at the schedule and she realizes that Thursday it'll pretty much be remote learning. There's really no live learning at that time. So can she schedule a doctor's appointment, and the student can later access the remote learning, and the attendance at some point it would count because the student checked in and actually did the assignment? Will that
Yes,
take care of the attendance?
there is no issue with that whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there's nothing that says students are expected to be logged into something from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. So
Okay.
it's not time bound. There are times where there is live learning, but the entirety of it is not live learning. So for parents that work and they want to work with their kids at hours after work, this can be done in the evening. There's just certain office hours or certain live hours that would happen during the day.
Will the live lessons be recorded?
Yes, and so there will also be asynchronous lessons. And
Okay.
so we really, looking at learning, those recorded lessons is where the difficult new content is going to be taught, where students can rewind it, replay it. The live lessons are the discussion, the questions, the checking in on everybody. So it's not going to necessarily be where you're going to introduce the new trigonometry
Okay.
concepts.
So for the student who didn't get the concept that day and is still confused and the parent can't help, the parent could,
There will be office hours every single day.
okay, and maybe the next day the teacher, I don't know, would go back over something in the lesson or
Review.
that kind of thing, okay. Well, it looks like everything has been thought of, every possibility has been thought of.
So I have a couple questions. So it seems like in this one action item that we're going to be finally, after all these years, approving Google in our schools, is that correct? Because it's never been approved before, but with this one fell swoop, we're gonna approve Google as a platform for our children. I'm just wondering what due diligence was done to protect the data of our children now that we're gonna expose them to Google.
So what data specifically?
Well, is there a guarantee that our children aren't going to be videoed, that their work that is submitted on there is their work and not Google's work? I've never seen the agreement with Google for Google Classroom, and this seems like it exposes us. We're all very familiar with what Google's tracking on us all, right? So we're asking now kindergartners, this will be all the way down to kindergarten, I'm assuming. So now we're asking the parents of kindergartners who are unfamiliar with the data that Google's collecting on our students and misusing, in my opinion, to just freely sign their kids up, not understanding what the consequences of that will be in the future. So I just wonder, has there been any discussion around it? Because we've discussed it in this boardroom for the last 6 years, so. I know that's a big question, but it's a big question. You know, we're making some really radical changes to the way we live our lives without questioning it, so it has to be asked, especially when it comes to Google.
Can I hitch on to that question? Does the online academy also use Google Classroom?
No, it uses a different learning management system.
Okay, so for the parent who shares Nicole's concerns, that parent could decide, oh, I'd rather go with the online academy, or I'm going to wait until in-school learning is available. But so that parent hopefully would have another option.
But we can also provide everything in a printed format. We will ask that from parents, and we will provide things in a printed format.
Okay. And then my other question, I appreciate that, thank you. I think there'll be more of that than people might realize. Not everybody, as a matter of fact, I've heard from quite a few that don't want their, especially the youngest ones, they don't want their intro to school to be on the computer. My second question has to do with the parents. So now we're asking the parents, so let me ask it this way. Say I'm a cashier at Walgreens, let's just use that as an example. Nobody at Walgreens said this to me, just to make it clear, it just popped into my head. But let's say I'm a cashier that works at Walgreens and I'm a single mom, and I want to know what we're doing for that student who now has a single mom who cannot be at home with their child during the distance learning portion or the assigned times. And then we're asking that parent to interpret the work or help the child if they want to do it at night. Seems like a really big ask for something that I think everybody in this room is anticipating is not going to end on the 17th. So, and I think we've got a lot of kids in that position and a lot of parents in that position. So what are those discussions looking like?
So the big discussion around that right now is really offering that childcare on campus. The childcare that is on campus can include time for them to complete their work with homework help or, you know, working in the program. If the parent chooses print or online, they could help assist with that. That is information that we're really working with Parks and Rec because currently, under the executive order, it has to be offered by a third party that offers childcare in your building.
Right. So we can't have our teachers in school with our students, but we can have city employees in our school with our students. That seems really arbitrary and ridiculous. Okay. So was there any conversation in waiting until the 17th, if that's the case? We've got the Parks and Rec. Why this big push to start everything online unless we were planning for it all along?
So the concern actually came about because there is a significant conversation around the state that we will perhaps be pushed back either at quarter or semester, and in the interest of engaging our families and students, it just did not seem responsible to wait that long to have access to students.
And also, parents who contacted me are concerned about the safety aspect, and they don't want their children in school unless we can have social distancing. I mean, I've had some, they want masks, they want social distancing, and they want to hear about the hand washing and all what's available there. So you've got that group of parents, that's their concern, and so these two distance learning models answer that.
And let me go back a little bit to the educational part of it. You know, we talk about every year, we offer summer school, and we know that all kids have a summer slide, so to speak. You know, they kind of move back a little bit, and then when they get there, their teachers catch them up, they move forward, they get those routines in place, and they're going. Our kids have been out of school since March, and we really don't know the impact on their education from being out that long, and it was a concern of them being out even longer.
I've read all about the impact that actually I think we do know. I think most people in the field know, right? You all know the impact that it's having.
We know it's going to be significant.
So, has anybody provided us with any metrics that we can watch? Because I know we're all watching the numbers, but are we all looking at something specific? And this was the whole reason that I had sent the Penn State study out that stated that they thought the infection was 80 times higher than it was back in March. So for those that haven't read the Penn State study on the COVID, if you had 100,000 cases, it was really 8.7 million cases. And so my concern is, because they're not talking about both sides when we're listening to the electeds or the health department or the state or Governor Ducey, all we're hearing about is the increased testing and the increase in cases. I don't know, all I know is anecdotally the people that I know that have contracted COVID, but it seems like the more we test, the more hysteria there's gonna be, and it's already taking a toll on our kids. So what is the metric that we're looking at? Because it seems really insane that the metric would be this slow the spread. We want to see a 2-week downward trajectory. If this Penn State study, just one of many that is correct, that it's widespread and many people have it and don't even know it, how are we ever going to see that? I mean, we could be looking at being out of school for a couple of years. Am I understanding this correctly?
Dr. Prasad was going to attend online, and she's been very involved here with the COVID task force. She started it, that kind of thing. But she wanted to be available to provide, I'm not sure she's going to be able to provide about the whole country, but locally, the county kind of thing. Is she on, did she log in?
Well, and I actually can't speak for what the governor is using, other than when he comes on and talks and says he is working with public health and the Department of Health, and that's how he will make the decisions moving forward for what his executive orders are for schools and for lots of other things. So we are anticipating what those might be and trying to provide the best possible education situation we can for our kids.
Because I'm reading, like just yesterday, I read the article in the paper about our local hospital, and it talked about, we had 5 people on ventilators for COVID, and we had 9 in ICU, and we're nearing capacity, and there's not a lot of detail about what that means. And I feel like there's a responsibility from somebody, whether it's our schools or our city or our county, to really stop the panic, because our kids being out is hard on them. I've talked to a lot of high schoolers, and they don't want to be online. They want to be back at school with their friends. And I've talked to a few parents, not too many, but I've received a few emails, as we all have, and they want their little kiddos back. And yes, there's the ones that want the social distancing and whatnot. But it seems like there's going to be a real toll on our society. And I hope we're talking about that locally, because we're going to feel the effects of it from our schools not opening. And I don't see any pushback from anybody about what we're doing, about what we're going to do about that. Everybody is not independently wealthy. They do rely on our schools to take their kids so they can work. So we're all going to feel the effects of parents having to stay home to teach their kids. And it seems like we would have some actual metrics that we're looking at. I know I was a little angry at the last meeting, and I know that offended quite a few people, and I heard all of them. I can appreciate that, but here we are another week later, and we're not sure what we're just waiting for somebody to tell us. And my point is that the people that are telling us what to do are stripping us of our liberty every single day, and nobody's questioning it. So what are the metrics? If it's for the testing numbers to go down, we're in trouble, because all we're hearing is we need more tests, we need more tests. Nobody's saying we should just be testing the people that are the hospital workers and the nursing care workers or the teaching staff or whatever. We want everybody to test, and that is creating a panic.
So I actually want to speak from an HR standpoint
about
my concern, and that's, I've said this over and over again. Right now, it is taking people at least 7 to 10 days to get a test back. So we've had staff who've gone out because they've needed to be tested, and then that staff member is gone for 7 to 10 days.
Right.
And so I do have a staffing concern about just opening the doors on 17th, which I did not have a month, 2 months ago. I now do have that concern, and that is a real concern of, and I know we're right now not talking about what opening looks like, we're talking about this right now, but that's really, we cannot just say, it happens until testing is part of it, and it's.
Okay, so here's the thing. Do you feel that way for every clerk that works at the grocery store that we all go to? Because, I'm gonna tell you, the only people that are protected right now that aren't worried about their bank account being on zero is people that work for the government, and that includes the school district.
So I'll just tell you, so my child works at Albertsons. He was sent home with a fever and paid for 10 days, and they just didn't have him come work. So that's not the case. That is not the case. There's lots of people in private industry that are also just being sent home and just being told to wait for tests. It's not just the government.
Excuse me, but Dr. Prasad is available and she is watching us. So, do you want to talk to her, or I don't know.
Did she use the comment on the speaker?
Will she just email?
She
So I guess the question is.
She said, I have emailed my comments as requested.
Okay.
So based on what you're saying, it sounds like we're setting ourselves up for not going back, because until we can get to so I guess here's the metric. Until we can test 350 million people, we're not gonna have a normal life. Because now we're in a situation where everybody has a right to a test, even though people are testing that don't even have symptoms. I mean, I just heard the governor say, we want to test everybody. We're trying to ramp up testing, but now the labs are clogged. And now the people are dying of other things, cancer, stroke, heart-related things, because the whole system is being overwhelmed by this hysteria. So that's what I'm saying. It feels like we have an education piece responsibility. Not just this is what our plan is, but we have a responsibility, even if we don't agree on the studies or whatever, we should be making some sort of an effort to educate our community on things.
And maybe, if you had a specific question that you would like Dr. Prasad to answer, and
No, I don't have any questions for her.
No, okay, I do. So there's a difference between.
Did she email in?
Yeah, I just have an email of things to read, so.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Okay.
if she's in, then someone would need to call.
You could use the speakerphone and call her.
Well, I mean, I think we should, in the name of consistency, what she should do is just email in. But if she does get a chance to email in, my specific question is the difference between antibody testing and antigen testing, because I believe that tells the difference between active cases versus someone who's exposed at some point. I don't want to again, I do want to just keep the focus on what we're offering for distance learning. But that might be a valuable piece of information for us to know. What we do know at this point, so again, you're absolutely right. It does not really matter if the two of us see eye to eye on the specifics of the pandemic or its severity or anything like that. But what we do know right now is that there's a 2-week gap between our calendar start date of August 3rd and the time when we can actually start in person, which is August 17th. That is subject to change, of course. But what we want to accomplish today definitely is everyone who's logged in and watching the meeting, we want them to feel better informed and better prepared at the end of our meeting than they were at the beginning. And so I would like to keep the focus there.
That's fine. We should be really clear, though, that this is going to constantly change, because we're not demanding any specific metric by which we're following and looking at, and decisions are being made in our state arbitrarily. And they may be good decisions, I don't know, but they're not explaining what they are, and they're all being driven by the medical field, which is a problem. We've never done this with any other pandemic, with anything else in our country, in times of war or peace, as Dr. Atlas says. It's never been done, and yet we're doing it. So I just want to be clear. I don't think it's, obviously I don't think it's appropriate, but I think that our parents are hoping they're going to hear something from us. And yes, we can say, you're going to go on and you're going to use one of these two, and as soon as we know something, we'll tell you. I think it's incumbent on all of us that we do more than that. There should be more of an effort for us to educate what we're looking at in the long run.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. But
I would like to, if Dr. Prasad sent in a comment earlier, I myself would like to hear it.
I'm not really concerned with, I'm fine with Dr. Prasad, but I had a problem with the initial hysteria that was created in our community.
You asked about a metric, and I think that was.
I mean the metric that our government is following to make these decisions.
Okay.
You're essential, you can stay open, you can work. You're not essential, you can stay home. That's what I'm talking about, our liberty, you know?
She did say to read her comment out loud, but that's up to you, Lisa.
I think now would be a good, unless there's any objection, I think now would be a good time to talk about emails. I do wanna say before we start reading them, that, again, in keeping with the agenda and keeping with open meeting law, it's important that we stick to agenda items. So if someone emails in with something that's not on our agenda, that's totally fine, and I would appreciate you reading their comment anyway, but I will not comment on it unless it's I feel like it's a glaring, error in fact, but if it's an opinion, I will leave it uncommented on.
Okay, so I'm reading all, whether they're related or not.
Yes.
This is from Cami Saltero. To whom it may concern, my name is Cami Saltero, and I'm a former student of the LHH class of 2012. Closed in this email, I have attached a letter addressed to the governing board from several community members, including but not limited to alumni, current students, current former educators, parents, guardians, etc., regarding expansion and incorporating of certain curriculum in all Lake Havasu schools. I want to thank you for your time and attention regarding this matter. Sincerely, Cami Saltero. The next one is from Marcia Cox. Dear LHUSD Governing Board, the citizens of Lake Havasu City pay taxes that fund the school district, including those that come from future bonds and overrides. If you're not going to return to in-person learning first, then I want you to know where to go to get a refund of my tax dollars that's paying for all of the facilities, programs, and everything else you will not be using, and that you failed to use for a good part of last school year. Our school district is making critical decisions about the opening of schools and allowing our kids to begin with in-person classrooms instead of online. The people of Lake Havasu, not just the parents of school children, want to be heard about this in public meetings. You are using guidelines, not science and data, to make your decisions. In an April 2020 article, the Journal of American Medical Association stated N95 respirators cannot be used by children because it's difficult to achieve proper fit. The article stated face masks should not be worn by healthy individuals to protect themselves from acquiring respiratory infection because there is no evidence to suggest that face masks worn by healthy individuals are effective in preventing people from becoming ill. If people are sick, they should stay home from school. This has been the expectation of our schools for decades. Our children need to go back to in-person learning, and the studies prove it. Look at the scientific data. The CDC is offering guidelines, not mandates. Here's an example of scientific data. In late April 2020, scientists at the Pasteur Institute studied 1,340 people linked to primary schools in France. The conclusion was children did not spread the infection to other students or to teachers or to other staff in the schools. The American Academy of Pediatrics strongly advocates that all policy considerations for the coming school year should start with the goal of having students physically present in school. The importance of in-person learning is well documented, and there has already been evidence of the negative impacts of children because of school closures in the spring of 2020. The more important concern of not meeting in person are the increased child abuse and attempted suicide cases that will be missed, and the missed opportunities to discover child needs, a hearing test or might need glasses, malnourished kids that we lose track of. In UC San Diego, Professor Jean Twinge's book, iGen, we learned the more times the student has in front of the computer screen, the more disconnected they are from their peers, the higher their suicide rate. We must start our schools in person and not online. Science and facts, not CDC guidelines, support this. In May, the Pima County Health Department sent an alert to local healthcare providers about the alarming spike in suicides that were occurring. According to Gustavo Perez, PhD, there was 161.5% jump in suicide in the first 5 weeks of the pandemic compared to the next 5 weeks. Social isolation was a major factor. Our kids need to be in schools with their peers, teachers, and employees that lift them up, encourage them to do a good job, work hard, and in person. You don't get that talking to a screen. You are having this meeting that is critical to our children and not allowing the public to be present because you don't want to face the public. I'm asking that you postpone this meeting until you can allow it to be in public, and more important, open our schools in person and not online. From Jordan Melton, go back to school, no more delays, please. From Kristen Stark, to who it may concern. My name is Kristen Stark and I have 2 students enrolled in Grande Classical Academy, 1 kindergartner and 1 fifth grader. It is my sincere hope that schools will reopen as planned on August 17th. I am much more concerned about the toll this will take on my girls' mental, social, and emotional health should school not resume as planned than I am about the COVID-19 virus. Our children need to get back to school. They need normalcy, they need hope. It is my firm belief that the reopening of schools is the first step. From Renee Frisbee. Hi, my kids are all set to go in person next month without hesitation. Please do not go back on this. Keep the schools open and do not hesitate. Also, we need public board meetings. Thank you, Renee Frisbee. From Monica Moffat. I am writing to express my view on the 2021 school year. Please watch the video I provided in the link below. This was a doctor who received the Family Doctor of the Year in 2016. Our kids need interaction of a classroom. They need structure of a classroom environment, the mindset that it provides. My husband and I wholeheartedly believe that kids need to go back to school. We shouldn't be given the choice of whether or not our kids get to go back to face-to-face or whether they do online learning. If parents aren't comfortable with face-to-face, they can do online. I feel like the board is making the decision to do online only based on their personal preference, not the preference of the majority. The majority of parents I have spoken with want their kids back in the classroom. They opened up the summer camp for the summer our older child attended. He was so excited to get to go back to the school setting, to see friends, to do art projects, to have PE for exercise. There were no issues whatsoever with summer camp. We never received a report of sick children, sick personnel, etc. I personally cannot provide what a child needs in an online setting, what they receive from a teacher in a classroom. A teacher has an education specializing in teacher. They enjoy teaching, they love teaching, they're good at teaching. Please, I'm asking that we be given a choice to send children back to school. There are many teachers that want to go back as well. The next is from Ashton Tisdale. Good morning, my name is Ashton and I will be having 3 children attend school this year. I understand everybody's worried about having children and teachers return to school. This is an obvious concern to everyone. I, however, have 2 children with IEPs and I believe they will do better in school than out of school. I have no issue sending them to school with a mask to help protect everyone. And I will also implement the rules for hand washing and keeping our distance before school returns, so it's not such a burden to teachers to have that sole responsibility to enforce it at school. I work in the medical field and I can honestly understand these concerns for everyone. It's such a difficult time, but for our children, we need to be in school. Having the option for online learning, I believe, will help alleviate some parents' worries, but I know my children will not be able to learn from home. Not only do we only have 1 laptop, but my children require the teacher with their learning disabilities. I'm a teacher to my children, but a different kind of one. Secondly, I have to leave my job because I cannot ask a babysitter to do this for me while I'm at work. Please take into consideration for this. If more teachers and parents don't feel comfortable returning, maybe the schools can consolidate for the families and the teachers who feel comfortable returning. From Carrie Young. Dear LHUSD Governing Board, my name is Carrie Young. I'm the mother of 5 current students and the wife of a current educator here in LHUSD. I read a recent letter that you were sent from Ms. Marcia Cox, LHUSD EBT chairperson. I can tell you that her sentiments do not represent the opinions of stakeholders I'm regularly in contact with. While we all would agree we would like things back to normal, it is important to consider some of the issues Ms. Cox brings up in her letter. First, Ms. Cox states you are using guidelines and not science and data to make your decisions. I would like to know, if not through science, then how does the CDC form their guidelines? She quotes considerations as opposition to guidelines, which seems like an exercise in semantics to support her position. Unfortunately, just because science does not support Ms. Cox's beliefs, that does not mean science is inaccurate or unscientific. Forming conclusions without evidence is unscientific. Second, Ms. Cox cited information published by the American Academy of Pediatrics, AAP, in April 2020, which states, all policy considerations for the coming year should start with the goal of having students physically present in schools. Since then, the AAP has published a new statement highlighting a safe return to schools for students and educators dated July 10, 2020. This newest publication acknowledges that reopening schools in a way maximizes safety, learning, and the well-being of children, teachers, staff will clearly require substantial new investments in our learning and campuses. This virus, its symptoms and causes, its treatments, its long-term impact of patients is very new, and the science is moving quickly. We must adapt our teaching and learning protocols for the time being, with the ultimate goal of having students physically present in school when it is safe and appropriately safety measures in place. The goal should not be a safe return for return's sake. A precautionary approach based on science could lead to less illness and death, and it very well might reduce having to close again and therefore speed up a sustained return to being physically present in schools. Third, Ms. Cox's unfortunate call to action to get a refund from public education is the opposite, requires substantial new investments in our schools and campuses of what AAP advises is best for our stakeholders, schools, and community. Additionally, I'm aware of a private school in town that is offering an online option for students at the same rate as those who would be attending in purpose. Private tuition rate is the same whether virtual or physical. Therefore, her demand for refund is not even aligned with the private sector. Teachers love their students and learning, I know this. They also believe in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where keeping students safe is foundational. Keeping students and staff safe should be the top priority. It's what's best for our community and future. It is difficult to learn when you don't feel safe. As Flippin says, you can't capture kids' minds until you capture their hearts. Sending students into environments that the AAP believes is unsafe does not seem like the way to spread the sentiment that we care about students and staff welfare more than the almighty dollar. I'd be interested to know what Ms. Cox feels she's unfairly paying for with her education tax, and she deems her money is worth more than human life, apparently, by the way she wants to send students into an unsafe environment based on the science we have as of July 10th. I'm worried about my own children's safety and their well-being because of unscientific and opinionated efforts to put them back in school during this pandemic, so much so that I'm considering non-district options for my children until I believe that it's safe for them to make a physical return. Maybe Ms. Cox would feel her money is better spent if teachers teach to empty classrooms instead of actively engaging students online and helping them to achieve learning outcomes based on providing e-based socio-emotional activities for students, staying connected to our community though we're physically apart. Fourth, Gila County teacher Kimberly Chavez Lopez-Berg taught in the same district for more than 30 years. And while teaching an online summer school course with 2 other teachers physically present in the classroom when she herself became ill. On June 13th, she was admitted to the hospital, then tested positive for COVID-19 and ultimately died. These are real educators in our state who are affected by COVID-19. How many Havasu teachers and staff are you willing and knowingly wanting to risk? There are 56 million Americans in the United States. If only 1/10 of 1% dies from reopening schools without appropriate measures of safety, that's 56,000 students dead. Never mind the number of students that will become ill, suffer long-lasting effects such as breathing difficulties, lung damage, cognitive impairments, all effects being studied from COVID-19. God forbid any one of them from our community's unsafe reopen. These numbers represent real people like Kimberly Bird. They are our spouses, our friends, our children. We should not wait to have the blood of Havasu residents on our hands before taking action to make our community safe. For example, the school reopening plan in our district from weeks ago stated before the state started to spike, then only 1% of our educators had a qualifying condition that would prevent them to return. However, the survey provided limited examples of these conditions. Many educators who qualified due to high-risk ailments such as asthma, thyroid, immune disorders, diabetes, and multiple sclerosis were left out of that percentage. Our citizens have taken this statistics of 99% eligible non-qualifying conditions meant that 99% of our staff wants full return to normal with minimal physical distancing and optional masks. I clearly recall months ago how COVID was touted as killing and also suffering severe COVID symptoms and dying. We have at least a quarter of district employees with pre-existing conditions. We are contractually obligated to them safe working conditions with regard to their physical, mental, and emotional health. Letters such as Ms. Cox's that request a refund for the labor of educators even at a time when they are not in their classroom for their safety. We cannot knowingly and willingly open school buildings now or on August 17th. To do so would be unwise and detrimental to our small hospital. In fact, the Mojave County Supervisors meeting, all 3 hospital CEOs agreed with this statement that we are seeing something in our hospitals that we've never seen. From Melissa Titus. Hello, LHUSD school board members. In the midst of a possible setback to start the school year, I would like to strongly suggest the online program that has been offered to students not be delayed any longer than the 17th of August. I have registered my child to take the online program not because of fear of the virus, but due to the high probability that the year will be pushed back or school closures after the return of the class. I want my child to be in a setting where he gets consistent education opportunities, not an on-again, off-again situation that will affect her learning significantly. Students have already lost a whole quarter of true graded, effectively structured learning. I understand that it happens to most kids around the country and I'm not placing blame. I would just like to see an opportunity to continue education now and not hold children back from staying as much on track as possible compared to others in the country. This, especially at the high school level, will be critical into getting into university. The next is from Ariel Peralta. Hello, I'm writing this email to voice my opinion that schools should resume open for face-to-face teaching on the start day of August 17th. I have a child that's going into first grade. I feel her best interest for her mental health and education is for her to be at the school for face-to-face teaching. We want to be with the teacher and we want that teacher to teach in person. I honestly don't see how these children that are in kindergarten through third grade are going to be able to sit for a long time in front of a computer. I truly hope these schools are open back for face-to-face teaching. Again from Ariel Peralta. A question that I have is, if a daycare in this town can stay open and be filled with kids ages 1 to 6 and be in a room with 15 to 20 kids per room, then why can't our schools be open? Our daycares have stayed open during this pandemic. I honestly haven't heard about a problem. I don't know if anyone has an answer to that.
I can speak to that. Daycares were allowed to continue to be in operation in the spring, and those that were in operation were allowed to continue. We did not have our preschool program in operation during the spring, so at this time we're not allowed to have that in operation until the 17th. That's released at that time. So there was an exception because the governor did recognize there was some needs and concerns regarding that, but it was in the initial executive.
I think that just highlights though how arbitrary these decisions are, because some people can have their kids, it's okay, and we haven't seen any problem because we'd have heard about it if there was. And we're gonna open ours, right, on the 17th?
If that's the
If-
time,
I
depending
mean-
on what we decide to do. I mean, when we open up our schools, our preschools
Our
will be part of
preschool will
that.
open.
The next statement is from Joni Hall. Dear LHUSD board members and our hardworking administrators and district office team, and all others making plans for us to reopen schools. Like most teachers and families, I would very much like to start in-person schooling. We understand the great benefits of our public schools to our children and our community. However, I decided for me personally that if our district starts in-person learning before this first quarter ends, I may opt to teach online if it's available to me. I'm considering my age and my husband's age as a risk factor for the virus. Regardless of people's viewpoints and so many unknown factors and even political views, your decision needs to consider the health and safety of everyone in the district and ultimately everyone in our community. The next comment is from DRC Babcock. Dear school board members, due to my husband's poor health, I will need to work in a remote virtual setting until this COVID-19 threat is bested. I must keep as little exposure to the public as I can. I personally do not want to catch the virus. I'm 63 next month. I absolutely do not want to bring this virus home to my husband. My husband is a disabled vet. At 63, he has several comorbidities. Heart failure, lung failure, kidney failure, and diabetes. I'm his sole care provider. I'm 63 with a heart murmur. We have stopped going to church and I don't take him out unless I have a doctor's appointment, and several of those have been via Zoom. We do not visit family and friends. I do not let family or friends come into our home to visit us. When we contact family or friends, it's in a virtual setting. The only shopping I do is for groceries and needing medicine at the pharmacy. The entire month of June and the first 2 weeks of July were spent taking my husband to have cataract eye surgery. Just this week, I went to the eye doctor who referred me to the eye surgeon as well for my own cataract eye surgery. My vision has been getting worse over the past few years and now I need surgery. I was not expecting this turn of events. I just thought I was going to get a new pair of glasses. Now my eye surgery and recovery have been placed with into the mix and accommodations figured out. My husband and I have come to terms with the fact that if we should catch this COVID-19 virus based on our comorbidities, we would not likely survive. I would never forgive myself if I was the cause of bringing home this terrible COVID-19 virus to him, because I was working daily in a closed school classroom environment where I'm at greater risk of being exposed to COVID-19 than I would be safely in my home working remotely. Why would I take all of this care the past few months to keep my husband and myself safe, just to place myself in an environment where I can't control where my students or fellow staff members have been or who they've come into contact with? The CDC is now reporting that the COVID-19 virus is airborne, and if this is true, the building that I work in is a closed environment. This means the air I breathe in the building is circulated throughout the entire building. It reminds me of a cruise ship or an airplane, and we all know the consequences that were in those closed environments with airborne virus. Thank you for hearing my concerns. This is from Wendy Moore. Dear LHUSD School Board, first I would like to thank you for everything the board has been discussing and working on, especially over the past few months. As we all navigate this new normal and decisions to be made with respect to school opening, I would like to encourage the board to open schools to in-person learning as soon as possible and not push out any further than August 17th or at the latest perhaps Labor Day. I would also like the board to strongly consider adding the option of Zoom conference calls available to the public so that the community can participate in real time at the meetings. It goes without saying that we need to take responsibility for our health, and schools play a huge role in that our children go through the education and keeping them safe. I strongly believe that the students should come back to school while steps are taken to keep them safe, as well as the educators and staff. There are many options available to accomplish this. Consistent hand washing and surface cleaning, encouraging older kids to wear masks, and helping the littles to understand their hygiene. Our students need to get back to their normal studies and not live in fear. This virus is going to continue to spread through our country, and we all need to change how we interact with each other. Social distancing in the course, of course, staying home when sick. Distant learning is not the same as in person, especially for younger students. For many, it is not feasible to parents due to their work schedules. However, it's definitely, if educators and or students staying home due to positive COVID-19 and asymptomatic, there could be a way for them to teach from home online. Perhaps looking at staggered schedules or some combination of online, in person would be ideal for when illnesses are experienced in a majority of the classes. There has to be ways to get creative so that our students aren't left behind in education. My daughter Jane Moore is looking forward to her continued education as a junior this year at the high school and is excited to continue in the WAVE program at JTED. She does not want to do online distance learning, and I hope the board can help make in-person learning available to those who want to attend school like my daughter. Regarding school board meetings going forward, please consider having options available so more of the community can participate. It's been wonderful to have our residents participate, especially over the past few years, and anything the board can do to continue to encourage people to attend meetings would be beneficial as all. As taxpayers, it's our responsibility, and we should be expected to participate and hold our leaders accountable. Again, any help the board to encourage real-time participation and discussion would be appreciated. Thank you again for everything that you do on your time today. The next is from Rebecca Amguinaga. Hello, and thank you for taking the time to read and review my concerns of the 2021 school year. As I'm not allowed to attend physically these meetings, although unlawful, and meetings are completely capable of being held in a safe and spacious manner for the public and parents of our school-age children, I am extremely concerned. Finding out again that the new start date is being considered for our children is extremely frustrating, as not only my family but many households are trying to work around the inconsistencies and changes of decisions made for our children becoming problematic to work around, as there are jobs being threatened of loss or forced to lose to accommodate these unnecessary changes and constant start date change. I keep up on the CDC guidelines that are advised to follow, and as of right now, there's absolutely no reason to allow our children, not to allow our children to attend school physically. Data shown and used for decisions on our children conflicts with real-time data and arguments that I continuously hear of why Keeping children from physically distanced in school is okay. In my case, I would love to speak for a lot of other parents and children, but I only speak for mine. My 10-year-old has been affected in such a negative manner since this cancellation of school last year, I don't even know where to begin. She excels academically and socially and loves and looks forward to going to school. She always has. Since the closure, within 2 weeks, she has started showing small signs of depression, and she did not mentally transition well, but she had a great attitude about it. As time went on, and I had to keep breaking her spirit with closure updates, she started to decline more. My daughter is supposed to transfer to a new school this year for the gifted program, and with the uncertainties of being held, I've been reassured that it would be yet explained with no hands-on. No hands-on in a program that is necessary for interaction is frustrating, and now come to find out that not only has the start date changed, but my daughter will be unable to attend a program she's worked hard for in person at all. My daughter, since that time passing, realizing she will continue to have no social interaction with teachers she admires, and interaction with children, which is necessary for academic release and social growth, has fallen into such a depression that's completely changed. This is completely unfair to our children. Curriculums are being accepted and passed without full review or public input. Our children's social academic life has come to a halt as they're stuck indoors without the option to see friends, classmates, and teachers they look up to. Our children have zero choice in this situation that they didn't even cause. It is extremely possible to put our children back in school and still provide precautions for safety. Viruses come and go. Physical and mental depression does not. I have this saying, suppression leads to depression. My daughter is a prime example. Please consider allowing our children back in school at least by the end of August like previously planned, so they can go back to some sort of normalcy before it becomes too late for my child and a majority of children who they really do benefit from more than just academics. I again thank you for taking the time to review my concerns.
I'd like to make a brief response to that. I had told Dr. Stone that parents were concerned about the social emotional well-being of their children, and she brought up to me, because we now have the elementary counselors, which we've never had before, that they would be going online and doing lessons also with the online students. And so that's a wonderful thing, because teaching children to become resilient, giving them the tools to become resilient when things don't go the way they had hoped, is one of life's greatest skills by the time we grow up. So, and I'm glad that the parent wrote in, but we normally would not have had any way to address that, but now we do. That's all I wanted to say.
Next comment is from Brittany Delgado. Good afternoon, board members. What is the plan to inform parents of a positive COVID-19 in the classroom? Will all students and teachers be quarantined? Also, will sick have to make up the work?
Currently what would happen is we, in theory, would be notified by the health department. We would only be allowed to share that in the classroom there was a positive test. Parents would be asked to monitor their students' health. At this time, they have not given us any guidance that says everyone would be sent home to quarantine. So parents would make that decision. They would be asked to monitor health, and if any symptoms happened, then they would be asked to quarantine as normal. And that was another part.
The next comment is from Chris Prohl. Thank you for your time, Board President, Mrs. Ramon, Board Vice President Cox, Board members, Mrs. Cohen, and Mrs. Alliard, Superintendent Dr. Stone, and Educational Director Brad Gardner. After watching the last board meeting in its entirety, I feel the need to speak. Everybody wants to return to school like we always have. We cannot forget to this point, as it becomes a silent wedge hindering us figuring out what to do next. It is important to keep in mind that it's not a matter of if we are ever going to open public schools again and return to normal. It's a matter of deciding what's the safest time to open in person. And I firmly believe our wants and needs should come second to what our science professionals tell us. And respectfully, I don't believe the school board is in a position to judge the efficacy of an organization such as the CDC or health department or other leading experts who, by and large, have spent a greater part of their lives studying and understanding what us common folks are trying to synthesize in a matter of months. Politics and prejudice are what distort facts. Don't get me wrong, healthy skepticism is integral in getting as close to the truth as possible, but it is equally imperative that we draw a distinct line between healthy skepticism and believing we understand more than top scientists in the entire world. And I applaud everyone who tries to understand this on their own, but make no mistake, the internet drowns us in information while starving us of real wisdom. And for this reason, I believe any facts brought up in a board meeting should have to be sourced so it can be scrutinized by a large group of people. It seems inarguable that we are currently in a position because we lack complete understanding of the virus, and by we, I mean the entire world. And now school boards across America are trying to figure out what's better, being too cautious or being too reckless with opening, all while health officials scramble for answers that come with heavy lifting of our scientific professionals who have been put under unfathomable pressure. Considering we are betting with our children's well-being and safety in addition to this most seemingly at risk, the staff, I would much rather err on the side of caution. I would also like to make a quick comment to our school board. These meetings should reflect how we want our children and the adults of our children to act. These meetings have devolved into a competition and contempt rather than collaboration. The amount of disrespectful and unprofessional actions is simply unacceptable for your positions. It is truly incredible to sit and watch the finger pointing and yelling and cutting people off and dismissing people's views without any indication of the ability to take in new information that contradicts previously held beliefs. Getting back to the task at hand. It is crucial that we fully digest the fact that we are not virologists, immunologists, epidemiologists, virologists, or infectious disease experts. These people have spent a majority of their life in the profession, and I believe that earns them the benefit of the doubt. The last board meeting, there was discussions about what numbers are truthful and what numbers are meaningful in regards to how we measure the danger involved in reopening or not. And if we insert those questions in the context of our current situation, which is our local hospital will not treat kids with COVID. Hospitals are close to capacity. PPE shortages are a big issue. Testing still isn't where it needs to be. Recent testing shows a 15 to 20% return rate of positives. In addition to the fact that we are doing close to nothing to protect our staff, I implore you to tread very cautiously and not get too cavalier when trusting your gut and limited information over the scientific community consensus, which has not arrived yet. Not to mention the newly discovered possibility of long-term effects of getting COVID. It is for this reason we cannot simply say children are safe because the possibility of them dying is very low. I will not let my personal desire for the return to normal skew my judgment in deciding how my wife and I will protect our children and ourselves in the imminent future. And finally, I would like to respectfully ask Board Member Nicole Cohen to rescind her statement if kids can't spread this on the ground that there's no scientific consensus of this particular matter. Without scientific consensus to back that statement is misleading and dangerous. Thank you to everyone who's trying to navigate through this impossible situation.
Well, I would like to respond since I was specifically named in that, and I spent a great deal of time on the phone with Chris today, so I'm really surprised that he didn't mention that to me about lecturing me on my behavior. You know, a lot of people have a problem with the way I talk, and I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. I've spent a lot of time here just trying to get the truth out to this public. So, and we had a great spirited debate, and he kept saying today on the phone, I don't want to be disrespectful. You know, I'm not really super sensitive about whether or not you're saying things with the right words in the right way. And I think that's part of the problem. But I do want to remind anybody that's listening, it was Dr. Fauci, who we are all looking to, which is why I had a problem in the last meeting, that said on January 21st during his Newsmax interview, quote, coronavirus was not a major threat to the US and not something we need to worry about. And then on January 31st of this year, the public health emergency was declared. On February 2nd, the China travel ban took place. And then on February 26th, Dr. Fauci said, quote, the travel restriction became irrelevant. You can't, or will become irrelevant. You can't keep the entire world out. Then a couple days later, Dr. Fauci said, quote, there's no need for Americans to change anything you are doing on a day-by-day basis. On the Today Show, he said that. Then on March 9th, Dr. Fauci said, it's okay to take a trip on a cruise ship if you're young and healthy, just not if you're elderly with pre-existing conditions. Then the Arizona order came in on 3/11. Then on 3/12, Dr. Fauci said, quote, certain travel restrictions absolutely helped in preventing the spread of the virus, and the Europe ban was prudent. Then on 3/27, that was our last day of spring break, and our prior superintendent had to send the letter out to parents. Then on April 12th, Dr. Fauci said, quote, had Trump listened to the medical experts, we could have saved lives. So I don't want anybody to misconstrue the fact that I am a conservative, unapologetic conservative, but I have to go after both parties. I am not an ideologue. And I am searching for the truth, and I'm the only one on this board that has sent out studies, asked people to discuss things that are happening. So I'm not trying to supersede Fauci. I'm not a scientist, but I know how to read, and I know how to look around at my community as I see people out enjoying themselves. And I see people and friends of mine that have had COVID, that have recovered. And then when I see the economic devastation, and people say, oh, you know, life's not, you know, you're more concerned about money than you are life. This is our system. We're watching the destruction of our complete economic system take place. There are no answers for that. When nobody's working, where's the money gonna come from to pay for our staff? You know, people are losing their medical benefits left and right. People are being denied access to medical care right now after getting a biopsy where they know they have cancer and they need treatment. There are things happening beyond the COVID test. And I just think that it's unfortunate that one of our staff members took the cheap shot in writing that letter to lecture somebody about their behavior. I worked on behalf of all of this staff for a couple of years to get your health care straightened out, to get your bond and override passed. And all I'm asking is for people to sit down and discuss actual facts. They don't have to be mine. Feel free to send me your own. I'd be happy to talk about any scientific data, but I want people to answer questions and nobody wants to. So if that makes me look like a really mean person, totally okay with that. Because
I will ask you to wrap up your remarks, please.
That's fine.
Okay. Can you give me an idea of how many more emails there are to read?
25.
Okay. Would the other board members be okay with setting a cutoff time at, say, 5:50? Give it another 20 minutes?
I'm not in favor of cutting off speech at all, because that is what we are doing in this boardroom by not opening it to the public.
Well, we do that, if it were in person, we would certainly be within our rights to set a time limit for public comment.
Yeah, you're always in your right to shut down speech as board president, but it's just not what we should do.
You know, I agree with Nicole on this, and I think in the future that we need to set a number of words or a number of minutes to read it, to read the comments and have more condensed.
That would be a fair.
But we didn't do that, and
no.
so I think we have to read the comments.
So 25 more, okay. Can we say that this is the cutoff if you get more emails after this? So maybe those emails could be distributed to the board members so that we can read them. Yes, thank you.
The next one is from Heather Davis. With Online Learning Academy, are there mandatory seat login times needed?
There are not. There are not any mandatory login times.
The next question is from Michelle Anderson. Please clarify, dual enrollment courses will be available only through Online Academy.
No, dual enrollment courses are available no matter what learning platform you're using. It's just through MCC's virtual format.
The next question is from Judy Long. How will students connect with their teachers using Google Classroom? And so I can answer that. So students would connect with their teachers through synchronous lessons. We also have built into our plan that teachers would reach out to students weekly. They would be available for office hours. And then teachers would be giving feedback. We know that feedback is extremely, extremely important when there isn't that face-to-face feedback that's happening. And so we have that built in. But building community and building those relationships are very, very important. The next question is from Dawn Lavis. I'm wondering what's specifically being done for gifted students in the online learning option. My son will be in 4th grade gifted, but I don't want him going in for the first quarter for in-person learning. So the gifted teachers have said that they would like to keep all of their students with them, and if they want to stay in a distance learning module throughout the year, they will serve them both face-to-face and distance. So that way those students wouldn't have to sign up for an online academy. And so the school will be reaching out to all the gifted families. The next question is from Mama Maltos. What about students who have special classes or go to another classroom for extra help during an on-campus day? How will distance learning accommodate them?
Our interventionist and our special education support staff will be working, again, as we mentioned earlier, depending on the needs that the children are getting intervention. We'll be coordinating that if we have a long-term distance learning and getting those services and supports in place to help them make the progress they need to.
The next question is from Ginger Balboni. Can you clarify or confirm that the distance learning option, not online academy, will still be an option once campus is open? When Lisa asked, it was hard to hear the exact response from Dr. Stone.
We are working with staff at each school site to engage more of our stakeholders and really look at what are the options that parents want as we move back to in-person learning. If distance learning continues to be one of those things that parents really need that access to, we will find ways to continue that for the remainder of the year.
Next question is from Deanna Ainsworth. It was noted that high school students can take dual enrollment through the online academy. Can you clarify as dual enrollment is either in person on the LHHS campus or on Google Classroom when distant learning? If online academy students want to take dual enrollment classes, they would need to enroll with MCC and take the classes through MCC's online course platform, correct? Not through distant learning Google Classroom. Correct. It'd be directly through MCC, yes.
How do the parents know what to do for that option for those students?
And that's where we want to make sure that our secondary families are reaching out to their school counselors so
Okay.
kids are appropriately enrolled in those classes.
The next question is from Amy Gregorich. Will students be able to be required to sit in front of a computer for a normal class day, or as long as they complete the daily required readings, homework, that will be sufficient? And that is correct. Your second part is correct, Amy. It's not specific times, it's completion of work, although there will be times that are available that are at specific times. The next question is from Tiffany Goad. It's the same question. Are you expecting certain hours or specific time? No, it is not specific time. The next question is from Jessica Kloistermeyer. What will happen to students who are not logging in? What about families without technology? How will you address these?
So the key for families without technology, obviously we are offering the print option. We are also surveying our parents to see if there is any support we are able to provide in that area.
The next
Oh,
question.
for students who are not logging in, I'm sorry.
Yes.
for students who are not logging in. We are having our teachers check in with those students to kind of find out how we can support them logging in on a regular basis. And we will just be able to work with families as we find out what those barriers to logging in are.
The next question is from Nadine Beaumont. I watched the meeting and I'm still completely confused. What's exactly the difference between distance learning and online academy?
The exact difference is the format or the platform that you're accessing. If you're accessing Schools PLP, which is the online academy, you will be doing their lessons, you will be doing their assignments and their assessments. It'll be monitored by a district teacher, but it is all the information from Schools PLP platform. Distance learning is provided from your child's classroom teacher, their LHUSD teacher, with our assignments, our assessments, and live lessons from those teachers.
The next question is from Erin Holmstrom. My name is Erin Oblak. Please clarify, if a student is enrolled in PLP and school reopens as usual, can I stay in PLP and not attend LHUSD in person for the remainder of the year?
Yes, you can remain in Schools PLP for the entire school year.
The next question is from Cindy Iglesias. I want to start off by saying how grateful I am to the Smoke Tree staff and how they contributed to the growth of my son, who is in kindergarten this year. Staff was like a breath of fresh air. I cannot tell you how reassuring this was to me as a parent entrusting them to my son. With that said, it saddened me to have the school year wrap up so early, and I'm disappointed because I don't feel reassured that this pandemic is managed yet. I want so badly for my son to rejoin in-person classes, but I care about the lives and health of staff and families. I will be making a choice for an online program for my son this year. I hope Smoke Tree will offer one with local teachers so we can join it to support our local schools. So Cindy, you can choose either distance learning or you can sign up for online learning. The link is on the website. The next question is from Mama Maltos. How do we sign up for distance learning and not the online academy?
If you are enrolled as an LHUSD student and this is approved by the board this evening, you will automatically be assigned to your classroom teacher and receive the distance learning.
The next comment is from Dr. Prasad. Dear board members, I commend the school board for implementation of a comprehensive distance learning course. I agree traditional learning is risky to implement during these unprecedented times. Currently, here's an idea of the general situation. Arizona, confirmed total cases, 135,000. Total deaths to date, 2,499. Numbers are trending up. ICUs are almost at capacity. Hospitals are full. ERs are full. Tests are almost done because we are running out so quickly. The LabCorp COVID test machine is at capacity and it takes 7 to 10 days before we can receive a result. Locally, numbers are trending up. There are 626 positive cases in Lake Havasu with 60 positive tests as of yesterday. This is the highest we've seen. The local hospital is very short-staffed and overwhelmed and recently had to hire more nurses. Although the mortality rate is low, the morbidity rate is significant, and we are still learning about the long-term effects of COVID in the body. We must diligently try to encourage social distancing and universal masking with respect to learning. That's Dr. Kim Prasad. The next is from Melissa Pavlina-Ganati. To the board, I thank you for your hard work. I absolutely love the idea of distance learning in the long term as my children, and lots of children need their teachers, but family may not be comfortable to send their children back to the physical classroom. Melissa sorry, I stumble over this woman's name. I will practice it next time. The next is from Mandy Armijo. Good afternoon. How are families with multiple children supposed to do distance learning with limited or no computers available to their children? And Mandy, like Dr. Stone just said, we will be reaching out. There are multiple different ways with packets and working with community partners to support families. The next is from Victoria Rolando. With a student doing distant learning at home, How are students with multiple families all supposed to be doing online work at one time? We have one laptop. I have no way to afford more than one. And so, like we said, this is not time bound. Students could log in at any time, and we are working on a master's schedule. The next question is, will distance learning follow the same, sorry, it's from Heather Davis. Will distance learning follow the same curriculum as in-person learning?
Yes, the distance learning platform, our teachers will utilize the same curriculum that they're using in their in-person learning class.
The next question is from Bonnie Hellman. Governing board, why not have all students participate in the online academy until school begins and have each teacher be responsible for their own class? Having teachers create all this on Google Classroom in 1 week is a lot of work for teachers who are not familiar with it. And so I can speak to that personally. So Bonnie, so the most important thing that we heard from families is that their teachers are important to them. Online academy is digital and it's work. It's not interaction with the teacher. And so Google Classroom is a way to personalize it. We have training that we're starting next week. And so the focus is on us. Also the PLP, that is not heavy work on the teacher, it's different work. And so this is important as far as supporting the work of teachers that teachers do to oversee their classes. And then also thinking about as students, when we do go back, we want to make sure that work is accessible for families for absences. And so this is something that we have plans to support staff on. The next question is from Brooke Pope. My husband and I both work full-time jobs, as do many parents. What is the school district going to do to assist families like mine that are unable to stay home with our children to monitor remote learning?
That's really a process that I talked about. What we are offering right now is through our partnership with Parks and Rec for on-campus childcare, and we will certainly take any suggestions that folks have for other opportunities for childcare to be offered.
Do we have a max on that? How many?
Actually, we're working with Parks and Rec to determine what that would be. They are open to providing as much as they possibly can. Part of the concern there is they have to make sure that they have enough staff to oversee all of that. And currently, if I listened correctly, so I apologize if I get this incorrect. I believe she said staff can work 29.5 hours per week, so they actually have to have shifts of staff to be able to accommodate a full day program.
And we had it open over the summer, or it's open currently. I don't know if it's ended, but it's open.
It's open.
Do we know how many are in there right now?
They had the groups, they had very small groups, they kept their groups to 10, if I do recall, because of that was the guidance at that time.
Okay.
So it will depend on the guidance.
Okay.
Just for that parent to understand, and I think he probably does, but I just want to clear this for any other parents, that option with Parks and Rec will only be available for the parent who waits for the in-school model, which won't start till August 17th. Is that correct? No, is there going to be something available for distance learning and?
Right, we are attempting to work with Parks and Rec to offer this as soon as possible.
Well, I'm glad I asked. All right.
Absolutely, because given the executive order, they are still able to operate in our schools currently.
Okay.
So we are hopeful that they can just remain open as soon as
And for
we
the
begin any program.
For online academy students and distance learning, but we just don't have the details worked out
Correct.
about how that would work yet. Okay, good. I'm
And
glad
who's
to hear it.
going to pick up the cost for that? Do we know that yet?
I have not spoken with Parks and Rec about cost yet.
Okay. I'm assuming it would be the parent that would have to pay it, so. I just want to put it out there. I don't want to put a bunch of false hope out there that, okay, I've got a solution and oops, I'm going to be charged if I do it, so. anyways, you don't have an answer, I understand, we'll
Well, I
get an
don't want to
answer.
speak out of turn, but I do know in the past when I've worked with agencies that are in our school system, they do offer some scholarships for families. I don't know how those are determined,
Okay.
and so there are some ways we could look at that.
Okay.
The next question is from Becca Bennell. How many lessons will be taught for each subject each week for high school? And so we would expect that there are somewhat daily lessons. That doesn't mean that students couldn't work on them in different orders, but the same as is in high school now, there would be at least 2 assignments that would be taken for grades. The next question is from Bonnie Hellman. If we are going to push back the time for distance learning, why don't they make the decision now so parents and teachers can plan, not do it week by week? The next question, I don't know if anyone wants to answer.
I didn't hear it.
Well, we're not pushing back the time for distance learning, it's gonna start August the 3rd.
Right, and our board, so we did not set locally the August 17th date, that came from the governor's office, and at this point, any further pushback will also likely come from, if it happens, it will come from the governor's office.
The next question is from Brett Miller. How about the school board focus on making decisions on something they do have control over rather than public health, statistical analysis, and testing methodologies? Since the online academy will not be having collaboration with peers, or you don't know if it will, and you seem to be setting up the infrastructure for distance learning just in case, can I sign up for the distance learning instead of returning to campus or doing online? Can I just sign up for distance learning instead of returning on campus or doing online?
It means all year long.
And as I have tried to answer that a few times, we are absolutely trying our best to offer the distance learning for the school year, the online academy for the school year, and to open in person as soon as we possibly can. So families can make plans, can have access to all those options as we move forward.
And then once we're back in school, he could stay with distance learning or with the online academy.
Yes.
Just to clarify, you definitely can remain on the online academy if you choose that option, but it's the distance learning that we're still talking about how to make that available year long.
We are still talking about that, but I will tell you we have some very creative and very dedicated teachers, and they are already offering ways that we could possibly make that happen.
The next question, also from Brett Miller, what's being done to address the social and emotional well-being of students in the online academy?
The online academy students will again have access to our counselors. We'll be setting up those office hours. So again, we'll be addressing that, and any of the information that we share on our website posts that their students will have access to, and we'll assume those will be available as well.
The next statement is from Dr. Prasad about the antigen question. Antigen tests are for active infection for people who are currently ill. It's an RNA test to look at the actual virus itself. Antibody tests see if a person has developed immunity to it. Antibody tests are only positive around 4 weeks after the initial infection, and then usually the antibody levels drop and the test becomes negative. The next question is about schools PLP. So will all school students be enrolled in schools PLP that was offered as our online choice?
No, all students enrolled in our school system, should this be approved tonight, would automatically receive the distance learning platform. If you would like to sign up for schools PLP, you can go to our website and sign up there.
Suzanne Strider. The next question is from Justin Harrison. Why not invest and implement safety protocols that make air quality safer? With a link about air quality. Opening without proper safety is not likely to go well. If there are mass outbreaks amongst staff, modifying HVAC systems and implementing technology that purifies and disinfects the air will be a proactive investment that will keep students and staff safe in the classroom. It will lead to lower absenteeism for years to come, whether we are battling SARS or COVID or the common cold or influenza. No, anything about air purification?
Our maintenance department has met with quite a few different vendors and has looked at different options, and again, they're continuing to look at what is realistic. We do have a variety of air conditioning systems. We have self-contained modular units, and then we also have chillers that are school-wide, so a one fit isn't gonna work throughout our entire buildings, but we are continuing to look at what's out there and what is feasible for us to do.
The next question is from Jessica Supernaut. Public forum meetings are needed for parents to feel included and heard. Our children need to go back to school. Please don't delay that. It is mind-blowing that children are allowed to be with each other and city employees daily for parks and rec, but not during school hours. How does that make any logical sense? My question is distance learning a requirement or optional starting the 3rd? Thank you.
If students are enrolled in school and this is approved this evening, then distance learning will start on August 3rd.
Not an option.
In the same way that if it were a normal year, our start date was August 3rd, that's when you would be expected to show up. That's the way it goes. Yeah.
Let me clarify. So, all students are expected to be, at the very least, in the distance learning program on August the 3rd. But some of those students will, as soon as we go in school, will be able to go to in school. Being like distance learning now does not preclude their being part of in school whenever that might happen. Is that right? Okay.
That's correct.
The next question is from Nicole Weston. Two, this may concern. My son and daughter are enrolled at Jamaica Elementary. I feel like keeping them from school is only going to do more harm than good. They are 5 and 6 and will be entering kindergarten and 1st grade. These years are critical not only for their learning skills but for their development. They will not be able to learn how to communicate with other children, teachers, and friends. They will be missing out on socialization skills and instead glued to a computer. The computer will do nothing for them. They need to learn how to socialize in a school environment, not at home. Also, my husband and I depend on our children going back to school so that we can work and make our income. Without school, we will not be able to work and afford our home. The statistics of getting COVID are slim to none. There's too much fear brought forward by the media. I hope we can all come to common ground and accept our futures while making the best decision for our families. Masks will restrict their oxygen, and I don't know that a kid will keep one on. Also, they don't do anything for pathogens in the air. Open our schools and let our kids be kids. Thank you for your time, Nicole George. The next statement is from Sally Mura. When will we as parents find out more specifics about exactly how starting school will go? How often will the student be required to log in? Will it include specific times or be flexible as parents might be working? Some parents may have to adjust their work schedules or just quit their job to do the distance learning until the in-person schooling is allowed. Will the information come from the specific school or the district? Will there be instructions for parents on how to use Google Classroom? So yes, we will provide all of the instructions. As we start meeting with teachers, there will be much more information provided to families. The next question is from Daniel Stolberg. How many students, teachers, and staff members' lives are you willing to risk to reopen schools? If you cannot even have an in-person public meeting due to safety concerns, how are we even discussing sending children back to school? The next question is from Daniel Plain. Please address how do teachers manage large class sizes of 30, 40 students and keep students safe with small spaces? And this is related also from Daniel Plain. What if teachers aren't comfortable returning? What is the plan for them?
So currently, we're not talking about anyone returning, tonight, but, for our staff, as we move forward, obviously, we have plans in place for them to be able to, work with our personnel department to determine what would best meet their needs moving forward, should we ever get back to in-person learning.
And then Daniel Plain also asked, can you explain who is advocating for faculty and how you're guaranteeing their safety? Please clarify your responsibility to staff if they're forced to work under conditions they might feel unsafe but want to keep their job. And so, I'll respond. You know, staff have very specific rights that are laid out to them, and there are laws that protect staff that we follow. We've spent a lot of time looking at ADA compliance about this, and these are real considerations of how do we ensure that we have staff and we are meeting the needs with staff. So when this happened last year, we expanded sick day coverage. We have some work from home agreements, and so we've worked with staff greatly, while also recognizing the need for the function of school. And so balancing the two are very, very important because the function of school has to happen. And so, you know, that is something as an employer that we work to. And so we are working with legal counsel, and we are working with Arizona school boards and ADE to make sure that we are complying with all laws and federal guidelines and state guidelines regarding staff safety. The next comment is from Marcia Cox. Your comments on not reading all the emails is exactly why we should have these meetings in public. You're preventing the public from having the right to speak. The next comment is from Leah Juve. What happens when you get a positive COVID student? Will this cause a shutdown? What if my student is sick with flu-like illness every year? Will you demand a COVID test? Basically, what will be the procedure if someone gets the flu or COVID? Kids get sick in life, it will happen.
As was mentioned earlier, if we get notified, usually through the health department to the school, we'll be doing some notification. We will be working very closely with the health department because again, how it's impacting us locally. One student is not going to necessarily trigger a shutdown, and that's important for people to know. It's whatever the guidance is that the health department is, we're working with them, but that is not an expectation that one positive case is going to cause that.
And we are not mandating any tests for students.
The next question is from Wendy Moore. Is anyone going to address or are there solutions the internet service issue that seems to be happening in Lake Havasu? The bandwidth is apparently being taxed to capacity at this point with the thousands of students, or without the thousands of students utilizing it. What will be the plan B that's put into effect when this issue begins? Thank you for your time, Wendy Moore.
That's a great question.
Would the answer probably be if you encounter consistent problems logging in, it might be advisable to just do the paper packet instead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that. I mean, the internet service providers in the community are the internet service providers that we have in the community.
I personally felt the pain many times, but yes, okay.
And so what I do know is that during the peak summer months are really the issues. It's not necessarily more people on. They have to go and physically touch things during the peak summer months. That it functions differently, and so we've spent a lot of time communicating with them to make adjustments because of the weather. The next comment is from Megan Randall. I am Megan Randall, family nurse practitioner here in Lake Havasu City. I have 4 children, 2 of which attend Starline and 1 that attends Thunderbolt Middle School. Yes, we are seeing a rise in cases. However, COVID is not going anywhere anytime time soon. How long do we put our children's essential education on hold? Our kids need to go back to school, in-person work, with hygiene as a top priority. We need to implement good hand washing and sanitizing. Our kids will need interaction with others for their mental health as well. It has shown that children are not affected like adults with COVID. With that said, I understand children may spread it to other family members that may be at risk. We are building some herd immunity as well. Our children need their education, and I highly support children going back to school in person, and those that want to do it can do it online. The next is from Melissa Pavliganati. Mrs. Cohen, as your feelings are valid and concerns are real, what is your solution? You are arguing issues of government. This is what we know, what the government says. For the people that believe in the pandemic, what is your solution? Go against the state, open because you say it's okay. And who will pay for hospital bills and loss of work when our children get sick? What is your specific metric?
I'm only listening to the scientists that I'm hearing. I'm listening to Dr. Atlas. I have a whole list of things I'd be happy to send you. My solution would have been, and I did drill this down both through my state senator and through our superintendent, and everybody was aghast at the idea, but my solution was, if you're a staff member and you don't feel comfortable, we will keep you at home. If you're a student, a parent with a student that does not feel comfortable sending them back, this is on the 3rd, you would stay at home. Those staff members would teach those students. The rest of the students and staff would come to school and resume as normal. And I only say that based on a few other countries that did not close their schools down. The whole world is dealing with the same pandemic, which I'm not even sure it qualifies as a pandemic based on the numbers at this point. That aside, at the beginning, I understand the paranoia. However, we do actually have data now. And so if we could just get to discussing those facts, you know, it's not helpful to have all these numbers that scare everybody. And we're not talking about that. We're just going on and making plans. So that was my suggestion. And beyond that, my suggestion is we should be talking about something specific. Not, we have 60 more cases of COVID in Havasu. We're at almost capacity in Havasu, because that doesn't help people understand. We have 14 ICU beds, 9 of them are full with COVID patients, 5 of them are on ventilators, and all of them were imported from another county. People don't understand the deeper meaning of the numbers.
That statement is not true. They were not all imported from another county.
Well, that is what Denise Burley stated at the meeting that I went to. So if that's not true,
I think that
maybe you should say what is true then. My point is that people should be talking more specifically, not we have 100,000 more COVID cases when those COVID cases are only counted because somebody entered the hospital because they had a heart attack, and now they're testing every patient that comes in and they have COVID. It gives a real misperception. So my solution is as stated, but that would never be implemented, but we should be discussing what the metrics are and trying to alleviate some of the fear. And speaking about what schools have done around the whole world that have dealt with this, that don't have the greatest medical care in the world like we do, that should be part of it, in my opinion.
I just think there was a point in time about, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago? I think it was in the paper that the patients had been brought in from other counties and were at our hospital.
Yeah.
And it might have been temporary capacity at that time. It's just no longer there, but I didn't hear it from her, Denise Burley, but I did read that, so.
I heard it in the Board of Supervisors meeting that 24 were imported from outside of the county. And then I read in the paper yesterday, we've got 40 COVID patients, very similar stats on 9 ICU and 5 COVID, or I mean 5 on ventilators. That may have changed. It may be a local person that's on a ventilator, I don't know. But the point is they're not sharing that information willingly, not at a local level in the city. And we can't even know the ages of the people that are dying. 2 more deaths. Well, what does that mean? That's important to kind of calm things down.
I have actually received updated graphics and everything that do break it down, cases by age, you know, they put it in categories, so maybe it's 0 to 10, 11 to 19 and such, but I have seen statistics that break it down by age.
Right, no, I've seen the cases by age, but
I've seen deaths
not
by
the deaths,
Also
not,
the
not in our county. At a state level, but not in our county,
No,
they
in our
won't.
county, in the same thing, they have the deaths as well, and they say how old
They say it in the write-up, but it's not on the statistics on our county, because I've looked and asked, and they don't wanna release that information. So, and those things are important, it would help a lot of people, I think.
Let's move on.
I just have one last statement. After listening, it's our opinion as a family with a special needs student that the school board needs to realize that the district calendar needs to simply be revised to 8/17, offer both platforms with one start date, versus this hybrid model for 2 weeks. If the hybrid is passed, it will be an absolute nightmare for transitioning. Our preference is in-person learning for our son with safety measures.
Sorry, Jessica Caroline.
Would it be, so in a circumstance such as that, would it be the best practice maybe for that person to log in at least a little bit, or maybe not at all, but then just plan on starting August 17th and hoping that that date remains in place, or should the person, well, I'll leave it to you all.
So as Mrs. Walter talked about, our case managers, our special education teachers will reach out to those families to really talk about what is the best option and how can we provide that service.
So that was it for emails.
So just, I'd like to recap, just because I need to hear this. As of August the 3rd, all students in our district will be considered distance learning students. Some of them will be working with the classroom teacher, but it will be distance learning. Others may choose to do the online academy. And one way or the other, by around August the 17th or later, many of those students will be able to go, maybe not the online academy until the quarter or the semester, correct, to get credit. But many of those students will then be able to go back in school if they wish. Please clarify what I'm saying.
On August 3rd, we will offer distance learning to everyone.
I mean, they
Parents
have to
may
be
choo-
there.
Parents may choose to sign up for the online academy, which will also start on August 3rd.
Okay.
As soon as the governor allows for in-person learning,
Right.
we will immediately bring a plan back for the board's consideration as to what that will look like, and any family who is comfortable with that plan, we would love to welcome them back to the classroom.
Okay.
And all students K through 12 have the option to receive their distance learning packet in paper form.
Yes, absolutely.
Will that be on a weekly?
It will be weekly.
I just had a couple, unless there's more sort of wrap-up comments or questions, but I did want to make the statement that I think everyone in this room prefers in-person learning. Like, we know that students do best when they're face-to-face with their teachers and they're interacting with their peers. That is what we want for them too. We want things to be back to normal. They're just not yet. And this is what we are doing to cope with this situation. I really am proud of our superintendent and our directors and all of the staff, because I know that they put a lot of work and thought and effort into this plan, and it's not the best case scenario because we're not living in the best case scenario world right now, but I have to commend them on their flexibility, their willingness to adapt to the needs and the circumstances that we face. Thank you. More questions or comments, or are we ready to vote?
No more questions from the community?
These were good questions. I'm glad, I mean, yes, it did take a little bit of time, but I'm glad we went through all of them, because I think even for the people who didn't write in, they might have gotten their question answered because someone else did write in and they learned from it that way.
And there's one more. it's just this is Joshua Day Hurto. And I would like to know why the school board doesn't allow the public to have a say at school board meetings. I also like to know why you risk our children's lives, forcing them against their will to distance, and then the rest of it's cut off because it was sent, just in the title. So I'm reading it because there is a name.
I will answer that. So, the decision to limit our in-person attendance was made back in the spring. Back when our numbers were still relatively low, we limited it to 10 people per CDC guidance. We have kept that in place. Even though I did not make that initial decision, I did support it then, and I still support it now. We are doing what we need to we're doing what we need to do to keep ourselves safe, to keep our essential board of directors safe. And so it's not limiting public access. We have done what we need to do to keep our meetings public, to invite and in fact encourage public commentary. And this is all within the parameters of the law. I have sought an attorney opinion, and the attorney told me that it's the attorney for our district, but she confirmed that this satisfies open meeting law and it complies with the governor's executive order.
And I am putting forth an agenda item for next board meeting for us to vote on that, so that it's on the record. Just because we should vote on that.
We can do that, although I do want to make it clear that I am legally authorized to make that decision without a vote. I will allow a vote, but I am legally authorized to make that decision.
I understand that.
single-handedly.
I just don't understand how we talk about bringing anybody back if we can't even be at the PAC and have 39 members of the public able to attend. I understand why we shut down when the whole world was in a panic, and I understand all your legal rights. I'm just saying, I intend to bring forward we should vote on that. Everybody should be on record. It's not about your authority. It's about, this is all 4 of our board meetings. And we worked really hard in the community to build trust, and it doesn't build trust when we just say we're doing this because we feel like this is best. Well, lives go on. Everybody's life is going on, and people want to be involved in their children's education.
Yes, and we have done what we need to do to accommodate that involvement.
We could do more.
Are we ready to call for the question?
I have one more comment that was emailed in but was not read, so do you mind if I read it?
As long as you read the name.
I'll read the name. So it's from Peter Pakes, Lake Havasu Unified School District Board and Administration. If you would please share with the taxpayers the consequences of starting school during the executive order and the consequences of not teaching our students at our school locations. If parents decided to educate their children a different way other than public education, what are the consequences to the school district, short and long term, and how does the district recover from the lack of enrollment? What plan is in place or has been discussed to lower overhead, including personnel and unused classrooms or buildings, if enrollment has declined significantly due to the executive order to not open schools for physical attendance? I just wanted to make sure that I got it in during this action item because it was sent.
Although I believe, I'm going to call point of order on myself. I believe that for consistency's sake, that person should have emailed their question.
What I'm saying is they said they did.
Oh, just a side note, that person told me, actually, who was emailing me, it did not come to the board, it bounced backwards.
Okay.
I see, okay.
Ms. Cohen, would you please email that to me?
I sure will.
Or that, so that I can have a record.
Okay, so his general question was, we're paying tax money towards public education, but the schools
What
are
are
not
the
open.
consequences?
Okay,
What are the consequences of starting school in violation of the executive order? There is a consequence to that, so that was his first question.
we're not starting in violation of the executive order.
No, it was a question that has already been asked, is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
I have already asked that question, but this is his question. So what are the consequences of violating the executive order? And what are the consequences of not teaching our children at school? If parents decide to educate their children a different way, what are the consequences to the school district, short and long term? And how does the school district recover from the lack of enrollment? What plan is in place or what has been discussed to lower the overhead, including personnel and unused classrooms or buildings, if enrollment declines significantly due to the executive order to not open schools for physical attendance?
I have called for the question. I just don't see, maybe this would take I don't even know if we have that information yet.
Well, we have some of it, but it's a legitimate question, and the ones that
No,
couldn't be
it
answered on the
is.
spot should eventually be answered,
Okay.
because unfortunately,
No,
as we've all discussed,
it's a
it's not
legitimate-
going away.
It's a legitimate question.
It
Madam
is.
President, members of the board, Dr. Stone, do you want me to make some comments globally to some of that, or do you want to address that?
What I know currently about the violations for bringing students on campus for in-person learning is that there are no sanctions in the current order. However, in statute, it says violation of an executive order during times of emergency is a misdemeanor and carries a $20,000 fine. There's really no information on what that $20,000 relates to. Is it per building? Is it per student? Is it just for the district? The further comment there is no one believes the governor is going to, rush to school districts and do, charge them with misdemeanors and assess a fine. So then the issue becomes actual personal or civil liability, because you are operating in violation of an executive order. Your liability, you are no longer covered for liability. The remaining questions absolutely were significant and we should certainly address them, but you are correct, I would not have all of that information right now.
And we do have a call for the question.
Kathy Fox,
Yes.
Archana Allier,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
No?
Lisa Roman,
Yes. Item 3.2 is the approval of renewal of Quality First Childcare Scholarships Provider Agreement between Valley of the Sun United Way and Lake Havasu Unified School District for the Little Knights and Smoke Tree Preschool. And this is presented by Mrs. Walter.
Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended that the board approve the Quality First Child Care Scholarships Provider Agreement between Valley of the Sun and the Lake Havasu Unified School District, Little Knights and Smoke Tree Developmental Preschools. The First Things First Preschool Scholarship Program provides access to quality preschool programs to eligible low-income families. This program requires annual renewal by the Lake Havasu Unified School District Governing Board. The Valley of the Sun United Way is the direct recipient of the First Things First funding. Quality First, First Things First funding through the United Way awards the annual preschool scholarships to participating eligible programs. This agreement will be in effect pending final approval from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021, with consecutive yearly renewal options pending our Quality First Star rating and availability of the First Things First funding. This agreement has been reviewed by legal.
Do I have a motion on item 3.2?
So moved.
second,
Any discussion or questions?
Archana Allier,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
No?
Kathy Fox,
Yes.
Lisa Roman,
Yes. Item 3.3 is the approval of memorandum of understanding between Havasu Community Health Foundation and Lake Havasu Unified School District for Student Assistant Program. And this is also presented by Mrs. Walter.
Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve the renewal of the memorandum of understanding between Havasu Community Health Foundation and Lake Havasu Unified School District for the Student Assistance Program for the 2021 school year. The memorandum establishes a formal commitment between the parties to support collaborative work in better addressing the behavioral and social emotional needs of our at-risk students through the Student Assistance Program. This is in all of our elementary schools with the intent of providing services in the middle and/or high school if opportunity and time permit. The Havasu Community Health Foundation agrees to administer and provide the Student Assistance Program to support the elementary schools, and the Lake Havasu Unified agrees to provide $20,000 in funding to supplement the wage and benefits of the Student Assistance Program Coordinator. Funding will come from our Medicaid and Public School Funding Program. This has been reviewed by purchasing and legal.
So we have a motion on item 3.3.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion or questions?
I just have one question. It notes in the letter about traditional learning classrooms, so they're gonna go ahead as well, like as another entity, and be able to have, excuse me, some
Right.
students on site?
At the end of the school year, when we weren't able to do the in-person learning, the student assistance program did try to attempt to do some virtual, but we didn't get that program fully implemented. We are addressing the reality in the event that we do have an extended distance learning. We want to make sure that we are implementing that through the virtual platform. So at this time, the intent is if kids are in school, then the program will be an in-person program. If we have to do distance learning, then we will move forward with making sure we have that opportunity to do so.
And if those students who need it can't do it online, would they make a way to be able to see them in person? Or is it only once we're back in school that they can?
At this time, just as we mentioned, as we're moving forward, we'll come back to look at that, depending on the reality of that. We have our elementary school counselors this year, so they're operating small groups. Our counselors also will be providing that, so I think we'll be looking at needs district-wide, because we do have responsibility to our online program, as the academy, as well as our in-person and our distance learning. So again, our intent is to do what we need to do to address the needs and to try to do that, again, to the best way we can with the resources we have.
Anything further to discuss on this item?
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Archana Aliyar,
Yes.
Lisa Roman.
Yes. Do we have any announcements regarding future meeting dates or other information? Okay. Then I will accept a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second. Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Archana Aliyar,